Exactly how much Jerry Reinsdorf personally owns in the White Sox has been revealed, and it might make you upset that he has full control despite not owning that much. And my guest breaks down the ownership pie on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also have covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Shane Riordan of 670 The Score joined me to go over the station, uncovering exactly how much of the team Jerry Reinsdorf owns, how the rest of the team's ownership shakes out, and why Jerry is still in charge despite personally not having a large stake in the team. Then let's discuss if the team non-tendered the wrong player, as Gavin Sheets is off to a great start. Andrew Vaughn, despite crushing a 3-run home run last night, still off to a terrible one. And finally, it's Wednesday. Let's do a Wayback Wednesday and go over the battle the White Sox had with the A's in 1990 for the AL West. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so 670 The Score did a blatant act of journalism by diving into just how the White Sox ownership pie is split up. First, their morning show, Mully and Haw, with Brad Biggs filling in for David Haw, had USA Today's Bob Nightingale on their show, who went over why Justin Ishbia abandoned his bid of buying the Twins and instead bought more of stakes up in White Sox ownership. In summary, Ishbia didn't like the Twins' debt load and the Pullen family's asking price. He also reiterated Jerry is not selling majority control of the team while he remains in good health. So the Score's afternoon show, Spiegel and Holmes, dove into how much of the team does Jerry actually own and how much does the Ishbia brothers own. And I sat down with executive producer Shane Riordan, who along with Matt Spiegel and Lawrence Holmes dug around, and what they found out was interesting. Now, I don't know what happened on my end, but I kept getting feedback on my microphone, so I'll have to keep going back and forth between me here letting you know what I asked Shane and then cutting to Shane's response. So I asked him first, what is the ownership breakdown like?
Yeah, so Speaks and I have been digging into this since Wednesday, Thursday of last week, talking to our respective people. And there's kind of an unprecedented shakeup going on right now within the White Sox ownership, where it's always been Jerry with not necessarily the controlling shares, but the controlling voice, which is a weird thing, right? So Jerry has 20% of White Sox ownership. His sons have a fund that they control. It's not their money, but it's a fund that they control that they went out and got money for that has 30% ownership. Then out of the limited partners, they're down to 15%, where they used to be up at about 30. A lot of those limited partners have begun to sell off their shares over like the last 10, 11, 12 years, right? Enter Justin Ishbia and his also very rich brother, Matt, who owns the Phoenix Suns. Justin Ishbia is building a massive, massive property in the North Shore. He's a Chicago guy. He's not from here, but he loves Chicago. As of about 6 months ago, ownership stake between Justin and his brother Matt was at about 6-7%. They were just buying up the shares that they could buy up. And then when Justin decided to back out of the purchase of the Minnesota Twins, he came in and started buying more limited shares from minority owners of the White Sox. Him and his brother now are up to 35% ownership of the Chicago White Sox. Here's where that doesn't really matter right now, though, because like I said earlier, Jerry Reinsdorf's voice, he's still the controlling owner, although he has only 20% ownership of the team. So you're not going to see anytime soon Jerry relinquish his stakes because his shares, because he's had the opportunity before and he's been very vocal about not wanting to do that. But if we were ever closer, this is when it is. Like, we're closest now to someone else having a controlling voice of the White Sox than Jerry Reinsdorf.
Then I asked, how frustrating is it to see Jerry personally own so little but wield so much power?
I don't think that really bothers me that much. Jerry's brought a lot to the city, brought a lot to the Bulls, brought a lot to Chicago sports fans. Yes, he's been very frustrating as of late, and his desire to not spend what other teams spends sure is frustrating. But I don't think that changes my emotion or my passion around whether or not he should be the controlling voice just because he has fewer shares.
I asked Shane, why is Jerry having this pushback on not announcing a succession plan? Then I asked how much of the Ishbia is involved in the fund that Jerry's sons have set up to have that 30% stake.
I think they're a part of the original fund with the brothers, yeah. That's a question we've been asking for both the White Sox and the Bulls for 15 years now, or at least like since the White Sox won 20 years, since the White Sox won the World Series. Like, hey, there's a plan here. You go out on top. Your legacy is up there already, and just let someone else take over. But with guys like that, Jerry's a baseball fan all the way deep down to his core. Like, he loves baseball. He's basically relinquished all control of the Bulls to his son, Michael. Like, his focus is baseball. And the last legacy that he wants to leave is seeing a beautiful new stadium for the White Sox and their fans. So until there are plans drawn up and a shovel breaks grounds, I don't think Jerry has any motivation whatsoever to. Yeah, man, unfortunately, that's a question we've been asking for a very long time that I don't have an answer to. And Jerry's circle, like his inner circle, is so small that the amount of people that have an answer to that are not going to give it up. As Jerry is loyal to his people, people are loyal to Jerry. So I think it's strictly a pride thing, and I think it strictly comes down to legacy. And he wants to see another winning baseball team before he finally decides, okay, I've done what I can do. Let someone else take over, and people will remember Jerry Reinsdorf for being on top and not for being cheap and not willing to spend money that other teams are.
Then I wondered why our Suns fans trying to caution us White Sox fans about the Ishbias, since what's going on in Phoenix with the brothers running the team would actually be an upgrade.
Yeah, I don't care what Suns fans have to say about that, because Matt Ishbia set a new precedent, and he's giving his content away for free over the air to his fans. Like, everything that we deal with here in the Chicago sports world, where the majority, I'd go as far as saying the majority of people cannot watch the White Sox, Bulls, or Blackhawks. Like, the Ishbias feel exactly opposite of that school of thought. So forget the Suns fans. You'll be fine. You made a couple bad deals. You brought in Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant has been absolute trash, maybe the worst year of his career. Like, Suns fans will get over it because they've seen winning basketball with Devin Booker, and I mean, that's probably it on Suns that I can name. They've seen winning basketball as of late. White Sox fans, and more importantly, the Suns and the Ishbias have shown that they're willing to spend the money. So put the Suns fans in a position that Bulls fans and White Sox fans are in, and they'll probably want to go back real quick.
Then I wondered, is there something Jerry knows about the Ishbias that we don't?
No, I think it all comes down to pride. I think my answer for any question like that will be the same. It comes down to Jerry's pride and Jerry's ego, and he wants to see himself do it before somebody else does.
And finally, I asked who he thinks is going to own the team in 5 years, where they're going to be playing, and any good restaurants he knows, since man knows food, man knows Chicago restaurants, and I'm trying to convince my 7-year-old daughter to eat anywhere else in Chicago other than the American Girl store, and I figured you guys might want some recommendations too.
I'd say some faction of the Reinsdorf family is probably still controlling owners within 5 years, but I think that might be it. I think 5 might be the limit. I believe they're playing at the 78, the area just south of Roosevelt, close to the lake there. And you said your daughter's 7, right?
Yes.
So I'm not going to recommend Rosemary or Il Carciofo or something. God, that's a tough one for a 7-year-old. I kind of stopped hanging out with 7-year-olds. Do you want to take her somewhere fancy, or do you, so she could see a fancy place but still eat really good food that she won't find picky?
That works for me. I just can't eat at the American Girl store anymore.
Okay, so a dish that's probably going to be very popular with a 7-year-old because it's pasta, but also you'll find some fancy stuff on there. Alla Vita on Randolph in the West Loop, they have these ricotta dumplings that just look like little clouds or little pillows, and it's just a tomato sauce with the ricotta dumpling. She would love that. But also, if I'm going to, I guess I can say Il Carciofo, my buddy Flam's place, because that has a ton of simple pastas and also pizzas. So Il Carciofo or Alla Vita, or if she likes pizza, in Roscoe Village, Spacca Napoli has some of the best brick oven pizza I've ever had.
Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up, and there's no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with PrizePicks. the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Think Josh Giddey is going to have a big night for the Bulls tonight? You can pick more or less on the 39.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. You can also hope for Tyler Hero to have a bad night by picking less on the 19.5 points. The NHL more or less can be as easy as their choices coming down to picking if a player will have a point or not. PrizePicks even runs cool promos like Taco Tuesday where they discount player projections up to 25% for even more value, and payouts are fast, safe, and secure. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't get the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So in 2021, the future was bright for Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets. It was looking like the White Sox would have this good problem of where to play Vaughn and Sheets since both were natural first basemen / DH. The team already had Jose Abreu at first, Eloy Jimenez at DH, but fast forward to the present, and after hitting 11 home runs in 54 games in 2021, Sheets went on to hit just 35 over the next 3 seasons. Vaughn went from being a potential cornerstone player of the competitive window to a reason on the infinite list of reasons as why the team decayed into its current state with his replacement level play. And oh, by the way, both were terrible outfielders too. And it got to the point where the White Sox actually non-tendered Sheets. However, holy Sheets, San Diego loves Gavin as he is off to a great start with his new team. With Vaughn struggling, it makes you wonder, did the White Sox non-tender the wrong player? Now I'm actually still in the camp of they should have non-tendered both and just went with prospect Tim Elko. And yes, I'm an Elko truther, but hear me out, okay? I'm not sure Elko can replicate his career minor league average of 290 with an 820 OPS and 52 home runs in the bigs. And he is off to a great start at AAA with an 890 OPS. So I understand why White Sox social media world is, lobbying hard for Elko to get brought up. But I'm not sure if the 26-year-old first base prospect who was taken in the 10th round will produce those same numbers in the big leagues. But what I do know is he comes super cheap at a position that, while iconic for the White Sox, is no longer a premium position. It's just not. And when the White Sox pinched every penny they had in the offseason, they somehow still decided to pay Andrew Vaughn $5.8 million. And he's now the second highest paid player on the team. But even after hitting a 3-run shot last night, and to his credit, he's been hitting the ball hard. He has a 123, 180, 263 slash line with a WRC plus of 26. It was at 10 before yesterday's game. A far cry from the still replacement level Zips projection of 248, 307, 418 slash line and a WRC plus of 105 that he's expected to finish with. And Vaughn's career F4 right now is 0.09. So if you translated Vaughn's production this season into dollars, and that's one of the ways that you can calculate, like, what could a team get in a trade? According to FanGraphs, it's minus 4.2 million. And last year, it was minus 1.2 million. And the White Sox still made Vaughn the second highest paid player on the team. And during a rebuild, and when revenues have shrunk because of the CHSN rollout debacle, that's money wasted. It just is. And especially when you had a very cheap available option in Elko sitting right there. We've had Matt Davidson play first base. Heck, you could have had Brandon Drury on a minor league contract play first. And then use the $5.8 million on some bullpen arms that could be flipped at the deadline, because the deadline last year was really good to bullpen arms. And also, I would prefer to see a bullpen that can maybe, protect leads. Or in last night's case, at least keep the game to a 2-run deficit. During a rebuild, you should not be wasting almost $6 million on a guy who is replacement level. And I wrote about this on SouthsideShowdown.com. The rush to the big leagues and playing him out of position, the defense that all the truthers have, it's got to stop. It just has to. I'm sorry. He's been in the everyday first baseman for 2 years. So you can't say, well, he came up and they put him in left field for the first 2 seasons. He wasn't playing his natural position. He's played first base since 2023. And he claims to be confident, according to John Triffin on the TV broadcast, He's saying that, hey, I know I can hit in the big leagues. I don't need to make big adjustments right now. So saying he didn't get enough at bats in the minor leagues, that's got to end too. Yeah, it would have been nice for him to see better, more pitches that are better in the minor leagues compared to college. But that ship has sailed, and now he's had 2,318 plate appearances at the MLB level. If it hasn't clicked by now, it wasn't going to click because he never got time at AAA. And it's not going to click because, hey, still send him down to Charlotte. Maybe there's a chance. No, it's done. Those two defenses are over. He is what he is. And guys, I used to be a Vaughn truther too. I thought 2024 was going to be the year he finally broke out and made the All-Star team. It's just not going to happen. And the team still could have saved about $3 million if they went with Sheets over Vaughn. As I remember, I think MLB Trade Rumors projected Sheets was going to get like $2.2 million in arbitration. And then you could have used that remainder on another bullpen arm better than Penn Murphy. And for the record, I'm actually fine with the process of them bringing in Murphy. There's nothing wrong with using, the scrap heap to build a bullpen since the arms are so vital. And if you're the White Sox, I'm willing to make the exception of spending money this, last offseason coming into the season, because again, you could have flipped them at, what I'm about to explain and what I'm about to critique. But going forward, yeah, I'd prefer that they build a bullpen with, homegrown talent, or finding guys that they could revive. But I am critiquing that the team only spent $1.5 million on Bryce Wilson and traded some scratch-off prospects for Cam Bouger and Tyler Gilbert. That might be the only tradable assets they have at the trade deadline in terms of bullpen. I would like to get another potential William Bergolla. And you could have spent a few more bucks to get some more other tradable bullpen help to get more William Bergolla-like prospects. Because remember, that was the guy they got for Tanner Banks, and he looks very, very promising. And Sheets is on a heater right now with a 318, 367, 500 slash line with the Padres. He could be this year's Ronaldo Lopez in that he finally gets released from 35th and Shields and he shines elsewhere. Seems like anybody that escapes 35th and Shields turns out to be like, this great player then. They finally realize their potential. Although I wrote about this on SouthsideShowdown.com, and it was not meant to be shade, but more of a caution to Padre fans who are embracing Holy Sheets. Gavin had a great April last year too. And I did many episodes last year saying maybe this is the year Sheets emerges. And then he tailed off quickly in May, had that terrible July, and he was bad enough to the point where the worst team in baseball was like, we don't want you anymore. So just be cautious, Padre fans. But with that potential for another bad season at $2 million, that's why I was in more of the camp of just go with the cheaper option like Elko. Or maybe even a platoon of Elko and a veteran on a minor league deal to get you through this build period. And maybe try to find your future first baseman in international free agency. Or maybe, hear me out, move Colson Montgomery and his bothersome back there. Or maybe Edgar Carroll and Kyle Teal play there. And heck, the A's just beat the bleep out of the Sox with Tyler Soderstrom hitting 2 3-run blasts. That's their 2020 first-round pick, who was drafted as a catcher / first baseman. So maybe you can move a promising prospect more to first base. You can even use Lenine Sosa at first for all I care. But anything but a replacement level Vaughn, who is showing once again that he's going to have a couple of terrible months. Then he's going to tease us with a decent stretch just to get his average up to 240. And his defenders will say, see, he can be revived. He can be saved, when realizing 240 is just replacement level production. And that it was not promised when Vaughn was brought to this organization. All right, I'll admit the A's have always had a soft spot in my heart. Maybe it goes back to my youth when they had those superstars in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And I want to discuss when the worst to 90 win Sox team in 1990 stood up to those superstars on today's Wayback Wednesday segment. That's next on Locked On White Sox. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of the ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Gametime gets closer, meaning you can score incredible deals. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On, and as the Brewers come into Rate Field at the end of the month, I can count on them to help grab tickets that meet my needs. The Gametime pick features makes finding the best deals effortless. It filters out the fluff and highlights the top discounts in the stadium. And I love that I can preview my exact seats before purchasing. No bad surprises when I get to the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. And recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Well, the White Sox will not have a 1990-like bounce this season. Already off to a 4-12 start this season, they're way behind the 10-6 record the Sox had through 16 games in 1990. That magical season when the White Sox sent off Old Comiskey Park in style with a 94-win season after finishing dead last in 1989. Yeah, it's not going to replicate itself this year. If the wild card had existed, the old ballpark would have had some postseason baseball before meeting the wrecking ball too. Instead, the White Sox did not win the AL West because the star-studded Oakland A's were in that division. And yes, I'm going to call them the Oakland A's in this segment because that's where they were in 1990. They were the defending World Series champs that year too, and they sported actually more icons than they did superstars. Jose Canseco, Mark McGwire, Dennis Eckersley, and I believe they acquired Ricky Henderson at the trade deadline. I think that's when he came back. They also had stars backing them up in pitchers Bob Welch and Dave Stewart. Just a stud team that won 103 games. And the White Sox, they were just that no-name team that would make winning the division hard for them that summer. I mean, yes, the club did have Frank Thomas, Robin Ventura, Jack McDowell, Ozzie Guillen, and Carlton Fisk. But you got to remember Thomas, Ventura, and Blackjack McDowell were just starting to establish themselves as future big league superstars. The rest of the team, as pointed out in the excellent documentary Last Comiskey on YouTube, and I hope you check that out at some point if you still haven't, they were just a bunch of grinder no-names. But they found ways to win. And on June 14th at Old Comiskey, the two teams squared off for the first time, and the White Sox showed they're not afraid. They won 3-2, although Oakland would show they were the better team by taking the next 3 games of a 4-game set. However, the White Sox went to the Oakland Coliseum a few days later and pulled off a sweep to pull within a game of the A's. The division foes met again in August in Chicago, and the Sox actually took 2 of 3 from them, and they did the same in September in Oakland. However, in between the meetings from June and August, the A's did enough to increase their lead in the division, where just the Sox were not going to be able to overtake them. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss some more players that are no longer worth defending. Because I already talked about Andrew Vaughn. He's no longer worth defending. Let's discuss a few more players. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Shane Riordan breaking down the White Sox ownership, whether the White Sox made the right decision to non-tender Gavin Sheets and give Andrew Vaughn nearly $6 million in the Wayback Wednesday segment of the Sox battling the A's in 1990 for the AL West. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X formerly Twitter at ToddJW or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.